The day everything changed, a young maid stood trembling in the middle of a billionaire's mansion while a security guard pointed a gun at her, accusing her of stealing a diamond necklace worth more than her entire family had earned in generations. But what nobody in that mansion knew was that the necklace was not in her hands, and the person who had stolen it was standing only a few feet away, pretending to defend her. Before we begin this emotional journey, if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps our family continue bringing stories that remind us that sometimes the person everyone looks down on is the one carrying the greatest strength. Clara Whitmore had learned early that poverty could make people invisible. At 26, she worked as a maid in the enormous estate of Sebastian Vale, one of the wealthiest businessmen in the country, a man whose name appeared in newspapers beside photographs of luxury cars, private jets, charity galas, and expensive properties. Yet Clara never envied him. She had seen enough hardship to understand that money could build walls just as easily as it could build homes. She had grown up with her grandmother in a small rented house near the edge of the city, where every meal had once depended on whether someone needed laundry washed or clothes repaired. Her grandmother had raised her after Clara lost both parents at a young age, teaching her that dignity was not something rich people owned and poor people lacked. Dignity was something a person carried inside. Clara entered Sebastian's household after months of searching for work. She had no influential family, no impressive education, and no connections to wealthy people. What she possessed was patience, discipline, and a quiet ability to notice things other people ignored. She arrived every morning before the household woke, cleaned the long marble corridors, arranged flowers, prepared breakfast trays, and cared for Sebastian's elderly mother, Margaret, who suffered from severe arthritis and spent most of her days near the sunlit windows overlooking the gardens. While other employees treated Margaret as an obligation, Clara treated her like family. She remembered which tea helped her stomach, which cushion eased her back, and which old photographs made her smile. Margaret slowly became attached to the young maid because Clara never treated her illness as something shameful. Sebastian, however, barely noticed Clara at first. His life was filled with business meetings, legal disputes, investment decisions, and people who wanted something from him. At 38, he had become wealthy enough to distrust almost everyone around him. His father had built the family company and left Sebastian a fortune, but he had also left behind a bitter lesson: people became friendly when money entered the room and disappeared when money left it. Sebastian had been betrayed by business partners, manipulated by relatives, and disappointed by people who claimed to love him. Over time, his wealth became both his armor and his prison. The only person Sebastian trusted completely was his elegant fiancée, Vivian Hart. Vivian came from a respectable family and had mastered the art of appearing generous whenever other people were watching. She donated to charities, attended fashionable events, and spoke constantly about compassion, yet she looked at household workers as though they were part of the furniture. Clara sensed something cold beneath Vivian's polished smile, but she kept her thoughts to herself. One afternoon, Margaret collapsed in the garden after becoming dizzy from the heat. The household panicked, but Clara reacted immediately. She supported Margaret, called for medical help, kept her calm, and remained beside her until the doctor arrived. Sebastian returned from a business meeting to find his mother safe because the maid had acted faster than everyone else. For the first time, he looked at Clara not as an employee but as a person. He discovered that she had stayed beside Margaret for hours without asking for extra pay. When he tried to reward her, she politely refused and explained that she had only done what she hoped someone would do for her grandmother. Something inside Sebastian shifted. Over the following weeks, he began noticing Clara. He noticed that she always saved the freshest fruit for Margaret. He noticed that she repaired torn curtains instead of throwing them away because she understood that money should not be wasted simply because it was available. He noticed that whenever a gardener struggled with a heavy load, Clara helped without being asked. Most importantly, he noticed that she never changed her behavior when he entered a room. Unlike everyone else, she did not become nervous around his wealth. Their friendship grew quietly. Sebastian began spending more time in the garden, pretending to read reports while Clara worked nearby. Clara remained cautious because she knew the difference between kindness and affection could become dangerous when a wealthy employer was involved. She did not want rumors to destroy her job or embarrass Margaret. Sebastian, meanwhile, found himself experiencing something he had not felt in years: peace. But Vivian noticed the change. She began asking questions about Clara, and when she realized Sebastian respected the maid, jealousy took root. She could not understand how a woman with worn shoes and simple clothes could hold Sebastian's attention more strongly than someone from her own social circle. Instead of confronting Sebastian honestly, Vivian began manipulating the household. She encouraged Sebastian's head of security, Marcus Bell, to watch Clara closely. She planted small doubts, suggesting that Clara had become too comfortable and might be taking advantage of Sebastian's trust. Then came the necklace. Vivian owned a priceless diamond necklace that had been a gift from Sebastian's family. One afternoon, she deliberately left the jewelry box open in her dressing room before going out to a private appointment. Clara had been instructed to clean the room, but she noticed the box and immediately closed it without touching anything. Later, Vivian returned in a panic, claiming the necklace was missing. The mansion erupted in suspicion. Security searched every room. Employees were questioned. Clara was brought into the main hall, where several members of the household stood watching her with cold expressions. Her hands shook as she realized what was happening. The necklace had supposedly disappeared after she cleaned Vivian's room. Marcus searched Clara's belongings and found the necklace hidden inside a folded piece of clothing. Clara froze. She knew she had never touched it. The accusation struck her with such force that for a moment she could not breathe. She looked toward Sebastian, hoping he would know her well enough to understand that she was innocent. Instead, Sebastian stood silent, torn between what he wanted to believe and what the evidence appeared to show. Vivian cried beautifully, convincingly, claiming she had trusted Clara and could never understand why the young maid would betray them. She spoke about how frightened she felt and how much the necklace meant to her family. Every word made Clara look guiltier. Security prepared to take Clara away. Then Margaret entered the room. Despite her pain, the elderly woman walked slowly into the hall and placed herself between Clara and the guards. She reminded everyone that Clara had spent months caring for her without once stealing so much as a coin. She begged Sebastian not to destroy a woman's life based on evidence that could have been planted. Sebastian finally looked carefully at the necklace. Something seemed wrong. The box had been found in Clara's clothing, but the necklace itself was wrapped in tissue paper bearing the logo of a boutique that Clara had never visited. Sebastian knew Vivian had recently purchased several items from that boutique. He also remembered that Clara had never worn anything expensive enough to conceal such a necklace without immediately noticing the weight. He ordered the security team to stop. The investigation continued. Security cameras were reviewed, and one detail changed everything. The camera outside Vivian's dressing room showed her entering alone earlier that afternoon. Minutes later, she left carrying a small handbag. The footage did not show Clara entering the room at the time Vivian claimed. Sebastian confronted Vivian with the evidence. Her perfect image collapsed. She admitted that she had planted the necklace because she wanted Clara removed from the house. She confessed that she had become jealous of the growing trust between Sebastian and the maid. But there was something even more painful beneath her jealousy. She revealed that she had been secretly using Sebastian's money to cover debts accumulated by her family, and she feared that if Sebastian became emotionally distant from her, she would lose the wealthy future she had planned. Sebastian ended their engagement immediately. Yet the story did not end with Clara receiving an apology. She was deeply hurt by Sebastian too. He had known her character, but when the accusation came, he had hesitated. That hesitation wounded her more than the accusation itself. Clara decided to leave the mansion. She packed her few belongings, thanked Margaret, and prepared to return to the small home where she had lived with her grandmother. Sebastian tried to stop her, but Clara explained that money could repair a broken window, replace stolen jewelry, and pay lawyers, but it could not instantly repair trust. For the first time in his life, Sebastian understood that being wealthy did not give him the right to expect forgiveness. Clara left. Days passed. Sebastian became increasingly restless. The mansion felt strangely empty. He walked through the rooms and realized how much Clara had quietly changed the atmosphere of the home. Margaret missed her terribly. The gardens looked neglected. Meals became tasteless. Even Sebastian's enormous house seemed cold. Meanwhile, Clara returned to her grandmother and began working at a small community center where she helped elderly people and struggling families. She earned little money, but she felt useful again. She refused Sebastian's attempts to give her expensive gifts. She wanted to rebuild her life without becoming dependent on the man who had once doubted her. Then tragedy struck Sebastian's business. A major investment collapsed after one of his senior executives secretly transferred company funds into fraudulent accounts. Sebastian suddenly faced the possibility of losing a significant portion of his fortune. The same people who had surrounded him when he was rich disappeared one by one. But one person returned. Clara. She had discovered information at the community center connected to one of the companies involved in the fraud. Her simple observations helped Sebastian's legal team uncover a pattern that had been overlooked by expensive investigators. Clara did not help because she wanted money. She helped because she knew what it felt like to lose everything and still choose to do what was right. Sebastian finally understood the lesson he had spent his entire life avoiding. The richest person in his life had never been the person wearing expensive clothes. It had been the woman who could walk away from his wealth and still choose kindness. Sebastian rebuilt his company slowly, but this time he changed the way he treated people. He created fairer working conditions for household staff and employees. He established a foundation to support families struggling with poverty and education. Margaret helped oversee the charity, while Clara eventually became one of its directors, not because Sebastian gave her the position, but because she had earned it through years of dedication and compassion. Their relationship also changed. There was no sudden romance, no extravagant proposal, and no magical transformation overnight. Sebastian understood that Clara deserved patience. He apologized repeatedly without demanding that she forgive him. He listened when she spoke about the humiliation she had experienced. He admitted that his wealth had taught him to suspect people instead of understanding them. Clara slowly saw that he was genuinely changing. Months later, Sebastian visited the community center carrying no expensive gift and no grand gesture. He simply brought boxes of supplies for the families Clara served. He spent the afternoon helping distribute food, carrying furniture, and listening to elderly residents tell their stories. For the first time, Clara saw him not as a billionaire or an employer, but as a man trying to become worthy of the trust he had once broken. Their love, when it finally came, was quiet. It was built through forgiveness rather than luxury, through respect rather than possession, and through two wounded people learning that love was not about finding someone perfect. It was about finding someone willing to grow. Years later, the mansion that once felt cold had become a place where employees were treated with dignity and children from struggling families were welcomed into its gardens for educational programs. Margaret sat beneath the same window where Clara had once cared for her, smiling as she watched young people receive scholarships funded by the family foundation. Clara never forgot the day she had been accused. But she also never allowed that day to define her. She chose forgiveness, not because what happened was acceptable, but because she refused to let someone else's cruelty control the rest of her life. Sebastian chose humility because he finally understood that a fortune could purchase comfort but never character. And Margaret, who had believed in Clara when almost everyone else doubted her, lived long enough to see the mansion become the kind of home she had always wanted it to be. Before the final moment of this story, ask yourself something deeply personal. Have you ever judged someone because of their clothes, their job, their background, or the amount of money in their bank account? If this story touched something inside your heart, leave a meaningful comment about the lesson you are taking from Clara's journey. Sometimes the person we overlook is carrying the very kindness we desperately need. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Because Clara's story left behind a truth that neither wealth nor poverty could ever change. A person's value is not measured by what they own, what they wear, or where they come from. It is measured by what they do when nobody is watching. The maid everyone thought was powerless became the woman who taught a billionaire the meaning of trust, humility, and love. And in the end, she did not need his fortune to become powerful. She only needed to remember that her dignity had never belonged to anyone but herself.